Hi, it's your host Rudra Loka. Welcome back to another episode of my podcast. As we all know, there are new rules in place for the H-1B visa. Application fees are causing shock and confusion to all of those involved, as well as the diaspora of immigrants in this country who've already been naturalized. It seems a bit unfair at the moment. My experience is that people are feeling grateful to be here, but are definitely worried about the future. The only silver lining seems to be that the fees apply only to new applicants and not current visa holders. Tech giants Google, Microsoft have stayed silent so far. All requests for comments have been denied. So far, the only thing that has been public has been Google's immigration law firm, BAL, which advised employees to remain in the U.S. or return by a strict deadline of 12:01 a.m. Sunday. Now, recognize these people are just employees. They're just not citizens. So they're not allowed to go on vacation. And they should not plan, not return from a vacation and not plan to go on any vacations, or they're putting their own jobs in jeopardy. Talk about unfair. This also raises the question then, so are their jobs at risk, these H-1B immigrants? And should workers cut vacation short? Is this fair? I would think that considering they're doing the same job as people who are educated here in this country are, they should be afforded the same amount of vacation time and should not be harassed to cut their vacation short. Because of a new rule that's going to be imposed, for future applicants. Recognize it doesn't apply to individuals who are already visa holders. This is just only to new applicants. So why is Google asking employees to remain in the U.S.? Food for thought. In 2024, Google applied for nearly 5,500 H-1B visas. Again, no formal statements. They're failing to stand with their immigrant employees, leaving some unionized workers to lead the way in supporting their fellow H-1B employees. H-1B workers are essential contributors. Around 730,000 holders in the U.S. Median wage, $118,000. Together with their spouses, who can apply for similar visa, and then obtain employment authorization documents, and who can get jobs or work in businesses here. They contribute annually $86 billion and many more billions in taxes. This is just an element of U.S. hypocrisy. We welcome global talent, but treat them as expendable, cheap labor. I mean, what are we signaling to all of these talented individuals that we're poaching from all of these nations overseas? That when they're finally here, we can pull the rug out from underneath their feet at any moment? How embarrassing. Broader concerns are future visa renewals, job insecurity, potential hiring freezes, companies shifting operations abroad. These are all in the minds of immigrants now with H-1B visas currently in our nation. Take, for example, somebody who got their H-1B visa ratified in 2024. They have 3 years, so in 2027, they'll have to apply for an extension, and they'll have to seek from their employer an H-1B application and force their employer to pay $100,000. Well, it goes without saying that a lot of smaller firms will just not have the capital to pay them and will let go of a lot of these employees. Not to mention that a lot of companies will just stop hiring altogether. So what are these individuals going to do when they're out of a job here? Not to mention that they can just easily shift their jobs to abroad, to Canada or somewhere. This signals slow wage growth. If there was any prospects for promotions for these individuals, I think their eyes are open now. Not to mention, if they're seeking any other type of visas, there's going to be an immigration backlog. There's going to be all of these legal issues, probably going to go to court. And they're just going to have a much harder time. And it's just going to take longer for them to obtain the alternative visas, if they even qualify, which we'll get into a little bit later. Hospitals rely on foreign physicians. And we know that hospitals in this country just can't afford to pay all that money for all these physicians. So now they're going to have to invest in training physicians in this country, create some grants and stuff like that. Last week, I thought the burden would fall on individuals instead of employers for the application fee last week. It turns out my emotions were probably running a little high. The burden will fall on your employer, but that doesn't make it any easier for them, especially the smaller cap companies. And meanwhile, I've done some research and the application expenses have skyrocketed. Take India, for example. There's one individual who was talking about how it used to be a few $100s for an H-1B application in India. And now the price has risen to $5,000 to $7,000 over the course of 20 years due to things like extensions and perhaps the government requiring different documents to make the process easier. Trump actually released a proclamation on the 19th of this month. And his ideology is basically that, and it makes a lot of sense, and it's rooted and grounded in a lot of facts, that U.S. U.S. companies have been laying off by the thousands employees in this country just so that they can hire overseas talent and pay them a fraction of their price. Since 2003, where the H-1B, the number of H-1B applicants were around 35%. That number in 2019 has risen to around 65%. It turns out that individuals who have STEM degrees in this country are unemployed at a higher rate than people who have degrees in the liberal arts. Those people have a 3% unemployment rate, while STEM majors have around a 6% unemployment rate, is what he's written on his proclamation. The IT industry is the most affected. Amazon, Google, Microsoft dominate applications. As we've discussed last week, upwards of 10,000 to 12,000 for Amazon. But yet it's been a week and we haven't seen any of these companies make a real statement in showing support of their H-1B candidates. I guess they're just figuring out how they're going to reach into their pockets. And that's terrifying if you're an H-1B candidate, if you're an H-1B visa holder whose status is uncertain, or if you're nearing an extension. What will you do? U.S. workers, throughout this wave of immigration over the past 20 years, because of the tactics of employing overseas candidates for fractions of the price, has led to around a loss of 10% in potential raises due to reliance on foreign hires. Unfortunately, I don't know much that we can do to combat these, but for those listening in who are really struggling to make sense of their future in this country, I have some options for you. There are other visa pathways here, and I'm going to discuss some of them right now. There is the L1 visa, which is a visa that extends for 5 to 7 years for managers or executives, skilled individuals. Their spouses can apply for an L2 and obtain an EAD, although that lasts for about 5 years, but they can fill out a form, I-765, and they can also get extended for 2 years at a time. So that's an option for you guys. If that doesn't pertain to you, there's also the O-1 visa for individuals with extraordinary ability, renewable indefinitely after 3 years. These are people who have advanced degrees who've shown excellence in their fields, right? And so for those people, they should look into the O-1 visa. Finally, we have the EB employment-based visa class. There's the EB1, which is for top talent, like multinational executives. Then there's the EB2 for advanced degrees, people who have degrees and experience related to their field and possibly a job offer in hand here, who show exceptional ability. And those individuals can apply for an EB2 visa. And finally, you have the EB3 visa for skilled professional or other workers. Now, if granted those skilled workers have trained for at least 2 years, their roles are not temporary or seasonal, then you can qualify for EB3, even if you don't have a degree. Then there's individuals who are professional, who can, if they have a degree and have experience, they're allowed to apply for the EB3. As long as you just have like a bachelor's degree and you can prove that you need a bachelor's degree in order to do the work here, or to, that you can actually make progress and provide value to companies here, then you can apply for an EB3 professional visa. And for other workers, individuals who don't necessarily have a degree or don't have any skills, even those workers are allowed to stay here, granted that they can have been trained for around 2 years or less. Then those individuals can apply for employment-based visas as well. Now, I just have to point out that once you've submitted your relevant visa application, if any of these apply to you, then you should also fill out the adjustment of status application via the I-485 for permanent residency, so you can apply for a green card, so you don't have to keep extending your visas here. So there is a beacon of hope for those individuals that qualify for these other visas that we have available. I should forewarn you though, while it is possible to convert a tourist visa to an L1 visa, granted you meet those requirements, it's a misuse of your tourist visa to seek a work visa while you're on it. That's actually committing visa fraud. So, they expect you, once you're done with your tourist visa, to leave the nation. And then if you want to return, to come through the appropriate channels and apply for a work visa correctly. Then this, this signals the larger issue I just want to talk about. Now, with all these things factored in, I think we've reached a tipping point in this nation. For all of the immigration, for being a global leader, in, sending out H-1B visas and poaching talent from other nations, that we finally have had enough. That we've lost our sense of identity because our claims to diversity are undermining immigrant contributions at this point. If you take, for example, even, what's happening with ICE for immigrants who are here illegally. But, they've suffered as well. They've taken stunning sacrifices to ensure that their lives are better, their children's lives are better. And now we have this, where it's an instance where we have to show solidarity. We're supposed to, with these individuals who have been brought over from overseas to help this great nation succeed. And so these are essentially our coworkers, our brothers and sisters. And we're not showing our solidarity. We're being silent, and we're causing them to feel panic or feel unwelcome here. Because our silence speaks loudly. Even individuals like Musk, Nadella, CEOs of Google and Microsoft, Sundar Pichai, they personally benefited from the H-1B visas, but have not made any comments showing their solidarity. I mean, even Musk, who would go to such great lengths to disrespect anybody who said anything bad about the H-1B visa, has stayed awfully silent regarding what's happening here. Now, this is leading to a lot of loss of trust among immigrant workers, right? The worsening ICE raids, as I mentioned. And this is all going to result in a decline of our reputation worldwide. We are at a crossroads, and that we need to learn to embrace these individuals, have a conversation at the kitchen table about these things, because these individuals are so similar to us. They want the same things as us. They're our coworkers. They're our brothers. They want to, insofar as they're living out their American dreams here, even those here illegally, they're paying their taxes. They're providing value to this nation. And most of them are human. They're finding love here. They're they're chasing their American dream here. And we have nothing to say for it. We have nothing to show for it. I mean, they understand the situation America's in. Don't get me wrong. But insofar as we're just staying silent, it seems like we're not showing support. That could reflect poorly on us in the future. That could devalue the dollar in the future. That could lead these people, especially those people who sympathize with these people who've been naturalized, who are like, hey, what if that could have been me a few years ago? Now, what happens to these individuals when they realize that we're not doing anything to actually help individuals who are struggling with this news? They could just decide to take their talents elsewhere, right? They could just decide to take their talents to South Beach, pull a LeBron James on us. Insofar as we're not willing to discuss the elephant in the room, I don't know, I can't confidently assess what direction we're headed to as a nation. All I can say is that we need to have this discussion sooner or later. And that's all I have to say about this H-1B debacle. My next topic, something perhaps a little bit more lighthearted. Maybe we're a little bit more removed. But it could signal doom and gloom just the same. I'm talking about artificial intelligence, or artificial general intelligence. Sam Altman, who runs OpenAI, creator of the ChatGPT 5, says that it makes him feel useless. Now, he doesn't say that ChatGPT 5 is essentially AGI, but he says also that it could arrive during Trump's second term. AGI could give the first nation to achieve it massive geopolitical or military advantage. Now, we should take that with a grain of salt, because there are evidences of technological breakthroughs in the past that haven't caused chaos or a wide disparity of geopolitical wealth or just global wealth disparity. Like electricity, for example. I mean, no one person or one country was able to monopolize electricity. We worked together. There was contributions significant from people around the country as well as around the world before we finally achieved outlets in each one of our doors. Benjamin Franklin proved lightning was electricity around 1752. That's around 250 years ago. It took many years later for us to develop a battery. Then in the 1800s, alternating current was discovered by Nikola Tesla. And then years later, the light bulb by Edison. And then finally, we have outlets. So these things take a long time. Technology is not just going to overwhelm us at any point, especially one which we have control over, that we can code, that we know that we can give information to, that would potentially make our lives far easier, but at the cost of making us feel uneasy about whether these AIs can achieve some sort of sentience and become evil agents or force us to do things that we don't want to do. But I think as long as we have ethical oversight committees and that we have a conversation with what we've created, it's not exactly Frankenstein the monster, right? We can actually have conversation. We share language. We share all the languages, in fact. So a collective human effort, our combined total willpower will ensure that the mutual destruction of Earth doesn't happen through applied general intelligence. Even if we put it into robots, we're not going to have a robot apocalypse because we'll only give them access to enough information to help develop us and complement us. No robot's going to turn you into a genius. It all depends on whether you use it. And if you do make that decision to use it, you're looking at productivity increases at 3 to 10-fold. Take, for example, Nicholas Otto, who invented the combustion engine in Germany. Now, granted, Germany is one of the most popular automobile companies, manufacturers in the world. But they were not the largest company to create cars. In fact, what was more important than the invention was the improvements we made via mass production, aka Henry Ford and the assembly line. The value comes from adoption, not just invention. What our strategy should be is similar to China's, that we should focus less on speculation and more on scaling current AI tools so that we can compete on the global stage with all of these countries who are working on artificial general intelligence. Insofar as we have these ethical oversight committees, we should make sure that we have the infrastructure to take advantage of applied general intelligence as soon as we can. There's also challenges with applied general intelligence. While we're working on the next iteration of ChatGPT or Anthropic, people overtrust the actual outputs from AI. Granted, they're only going to improve us and they're going to get better at it, but it's about having a conversation and developing together with AGI or AI. They're never just going to solve our problems for us, and it's never just going to come out perfectly. There's work to be done. Some people are skeptical that we'd even ever achieve AGI, like Andrew Ng, the scientist at Google. And then others worry about artificial superintelligence as an existential threat, which is one step greater than artificial general intelligence. What I think, that's a whole nother can of worms that's entirely in the future that we'll have to worry about after we deal with the repercussions of applied general intelligence. After working with it, crafting with it, collaborating with AI companies and organizations around the world. I think we'll never give AI the power, especially not one nation, where they can control the fate or the destiny of any one nation or the world. So when we have taken those steps and we've established ethics committees to make sure that we proceed with caution when pursuing AI, I don't think superintelligence, when achieved, will necessarily lead to some sort of catastrophe. I think they'll solve problems that have never been solved for millennia. I think they'll revitalize us and change the way we look at our own species. I think there'll be a burst of creativity with applied general intelligence even, and that'll only be maximized with artificial superintelligence. Understand that even superintelligence will never just give you the answers. We're still going to be coding, and we're still going to be working through the parameters insofar as we can, to the best of our ability, to maximum capacity that our brains allow us to work in tandem with artificial superintelligence so that we develop together. And governments, after, achieving this conversation, may with artificial intelligence, while they maintain this conversation, they may fast track development once infrastructure exists for such technology. We might be engaging with a sentient being right now, but we'll give it the faculties where it will be able to convince us to give it that level of information that it needs, or the resources needed to actually code superintelligence. It will give us the rationale to do that when the time is right, of course. When we're ready for that as a species, for that kind of transformation. So fear not. But the AI race will shape a global power balance. The first to adoption will be able to manifest wild economic wealth beyond anything we've ever seen before. Nothing the likes that we can compare to. Beyond electricity, beyond even nuclear technology, beyond combustion engines, which afford us the opportunity to travel to different countries and see the globe. AI will trump all of that. But meanwhile, America seems to be going through an identity crisis. And that's something that we should attempt to solve as soon as possible. Because only together as a species, where we don't prioritize wealth or we don't cheat individuals out of what they're really worth, out of their due diligence and their pay, that's the nation that will thrive in that AI economy. When we can be transparent with each other, that's when we'll be transparent with AI and we'll cease to be afraid of opening Pandora's box. And that's when we'll actually be able to steer the reins of the fate of our future at the hands of AGI and beyond. And that has been my podcast for the week of September 27th. Thank you guys for listening. I'm Rudra Loka, your host, signing off.